Listen to the music. Whoa, whoa, listen to the music. Well, listen to the music. Well, here we are again. This is I Am Not the Elite, and I'm here to bring you some really serious breaking news that a new Thunder has been reporting on for the past almost 7 to 8 years about the gold standard, money, and all kinds of things that are happening. Stay tuned. This is going to be a good one. Short report, but good one. All right, well, here we are. I Am Not the Elite on the road traveling somewhere within North America. And if you can identify some of the sites, you can see where we are now. But today, we also know that the elite is going to be very full. Very full. And those that follow the elite are going to be full just along with them, brought down to the abyss. And my God, who wants to go there? So as we know that a new Thunder has been reporting on BRICS, which was an economic system that was designed by Russia, Iran, China, Brazil had a part in that, South Africa has a part in that, India has a part in that. And these are large sections of the world. So we're talking about anywhere between 48 to 52% of the planet, including some of these Caribbean islands that are now favoring China over the United States. So this war over here in Ukraine is very interesting, because as it seems that they were trying to force Russia into a box, and if you listen to any of the news, you would see that everybody has the same type of news. I don't care if you're listening to the quote unquote MSNBC, CNN, CBS, even Fox News, any of the Fox News, all of them are reporting the same thing about how terrible Russia is doing, what they're doing, et cetera. And that they're going to be taking them off the SWIFT. Now I told you that they are, when I say they, the BRICS side of things, the other economic institution that's being set up for the world planet. The SWIFT system is for the cabal. The SWIFT system is for the system that's in place now. Everyone in the SWIFT system is run by the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve has set up the SWIFT system to be able to move the money around so that they will be able to control the wealth of nations. This is the reason why a lot of African nations and also Middle Eastern nations are getting out of, or have been trying to get out of, the SWIFT system from up underneath the Federal Reserve. Now, you know, the United States, Canada, Mexico, all of Europe, a lot of these places are under the what you call the petrodollar, which is the dollar, the US dollar, that is not on the gold standard. Now Nixon took it off the gold standard back in 74, 75, 76, sometime before he was thrown out of office. And they stopped taking silver and stuff like that out of the coins back, I believe, was in the 60s. So now what they've done is that they, and before that, I believe it was during the Great Depression, one of the Roosevelts, they absconded with all of the gold and forced people to bring all gold into the government and made gold illegal for people to hold. Taking so with all these different things that have happened over the past, 75 years, whatever, taking the more wealth out of the people's hands. So now you come up today and you have this war with Russia, and they're putting on sanctions. Now, as you can see, Germany was Germany and a few other, France, very skeptical about what was going on with all these sanctions, and they refused to put energy sanctions on Russia. Why is that? Because Russia owns a lot of gas, and it puts almost 42 to 43% of gas into Europe, especially into Germany. Germany is a very powerful, rich nation, and that's where they get a lot of their energy from. So Russia has a lot of power. So when they're trying to take them off the Swiss, and you heard all these different World Economic Councils and all this other type of stuff patting themselves on the back, putting Russia in a bind, or what they thought was a bind, in a corner, by taking them off the Swiss, and then shutting down their oligarchs, as they call them, shutting down all the wealth, making sure that they're not able to fund, quote unquote, their war machine. Now, their war machine, I just want to digress this a little bit, is in Ukraine doing what? It is in Ukraine actually liberating the Ukrainian people from a system that was taken over by the West. And again, I reported on this a few times before, and also New Thunder has reported on his channel that is now shut down, that in 2014, the West went in there, created a coup, and took over the government and installed a de facto government that was more friendly to NATO. Why did they do this? Because the original government that was elected by a democratically process was elected to represent the people, and the people of Ukraine did not want NATO forces in their country. Ukraine is very close to Russia. Ukraine is a border nation of Russia and a buffer from NATO and NATO forces. So they didn't want all those forces over there creating a bad situation for them with their neighboring border. Borders are all fictitious, by the way. They're all invisible, etc. But we're not going to get into that. So they didn't want all that stuff happening over there. So what the West did with the United States, and who was in charge back then? It was Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and your President Joe Biden. Now remember, Joe Biden, Ukraine is one of the most corrupt countries on the planet, if not the most corrupt country on the planet. And that doesn't go by my opinion. That goes by world view and how it's ranked. And who was over there doing a lot of business over there? But a lot of United States public officials. Joe Biden, his son, making a couple of $1 million a year on a job he didn't know anything about in the energy sector. So you can imagine. Also, Joe Biden over there in Ukraine bragged about how he was going to keep a couple of $1 billion in financing out of Ukraine if they did not fire the prosecutor that was looking into corruption between him and his son and Ukrainian government. And he bragged about how when he said, as the vice president of the United States, how he said that he was going to stop funding over there, because he was in charge of Ukrainian policy, how to stop funding over there, billions of dollars in aid. All of a sudden, the Ukrainian government fired their special prosecutor that was looking into the corruption charges of Joe Biden and his son. Here recently, there was a judge that overturned a few rulings here in the United States and said that whatever rulings that were going on with that, it was inappropriate for them to keep Joe Biden's name out of it, and Joe Biden's name can now go into these corruption charges, and they'll start looking into it. So it gets very complicated. So Russia goes into Ukraine because the West was actually putting a lot of different types of military equipment in there, making Ukraine a de facto NATO participant. The president, the comedian, actor, dancer, he was going around bragging how he was going to make Ukraine a part of the Western NATO alliance. So not only that, but you have to understand that when this de facto government came in, what happened with Ukraine is that Ukraine, the government itself, began to start lobbing bombs over into the Donbass region of the independent people over there that are Russian speaking. The government started doing that. So Russia and Ukraine got together and they had this thing called the Minsk Accord. When the Minsk Accord came in, the government stopped lobbing bombs over there, and then they had the neo-Nazis went in there and were lobbing bombs and killing the people over there in the Donbass region, creating a very unsafe situation. That went on for almost 6 years. So with that going on, Russia kept on saying, stop it, stop it, stop it. We don't want this. We're going to have to create a situation where we're going to have to protect the security of our people over there in the Donbass region and other areas. So it got to a point as to where when they started to negotiate, the West said under Biden and under a few other governmental NATO governments, they didn't want to negotiate with Russia. So Russia was forced to protect its borders. That's why they were in there first. Then they said that they were going to create the security for the people of the Donbass region. Then they said that they were going to excavate the neo-Nazi element that was causing all the death and killing over there in Ukraine. And then they said that they were going after humanitarian issues in Ukraine and bringing humanitarian crimes against humanity against anyone in Ukraine that was doing all this inhumane stuff. To make that even worse, Russia also stepped in and stopped the Ukrainians and other European countries from destroying, hurting, killing, and disrupting all of the so-called black people that were over there in the area. And right now, what's happening is some of the most racist things that you can even think of going on with people trying to evacuate. So when you look at the border and people evacuating, you don't see any black people evacuating into any other European countries. Why is that? It's because they're turning away the Ukrainians and other European countries, Poland, and all those other bordering countries are turning away anybody who is brown skinned, dark skinned, black skinned, or deep carbon based people away from the border because of their racist behavior towards these people. They won't let them out of the country. And this is real. They're not even talking about this on mainstream media. They're talking about all these other babies getting killed and stuff like that. But what about the real hard racist aspects of what's going on over there in Ukraine against the people that went over there to help build the country? So Russia had stepped in a few years ago and stopped a lot of these neo-Nazis from killing a lot of these black people. So Russia's over there doing what they have to do. So when they started going off the Swiss system, when they started crunching them off of this system that we're in, the United States, Canada, Britain, and all this other type stuff, what did Russia do? Russia did something that was expected, and the New Thunder reported on this many times about them going off of the Swiss system anyway. So now what happened is that what they did is that they just announced yesterday that they are now returning to the gold standard. Wow, that is deep. That is deep. They are returning to the gold standard. And if you you turn on the debt clock, and when you turn on the debt clock for the United States, the debt clock, and when you take a really good look at it, it shows you what it would take in the amount of gold or silver in order for the United States to get out of its debt. So when the Russians got off of the gold standard, which was the plan anyway, you're going to see China follow. You're going to see many other countries around the world follow, and the petrodollar will all of a sudden become the non-participating dollar, or the standard currency of the world. Once that happens, they're going to have to reevaluate the gold, which is now standing at about $1,800. They're going to have to reevaluate silver, which now is standing about $34. And when you take a look at what it's going to cost for the United States to get out of debt, right now for silver, they're evaluating it anywhere from $3,500 to $4,000 an ounce. For gold, it's all the way up to $10,000 an ounce that the debt clock is evaluating it in order for them to be able to pay off all their debt. So what we're getting ready to go into in this new economic system is that they're going back to the gold standard, and all standard money will have to be reevaluated. That is going to cause a crash in some areas, and it's going to cause other people to really rise. So what I'm saying to you now is that if you're listening to any of the Western news everything that they're telling you is based on their systematic view of what they want you to know and your feelings of what they want you to support, but they're not telling you the truth of what is actually happening. So if you're listening to alternative news, such as A New Thunder and a lot of other different people that's over there, I Am Not the Elite, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you will find that you will be able to get your house in order. So again, when you talk about co-creation communities, and A New Thunder has been talking about co-creation communities back since 2010 and also beyond with self-determination. Why? Because if you don't have your own economic system in place, you're going to be caught in this system, and you will not be free, but you'll be suffering. So if you have an internal system within the system that you're in now, you're going to be able to be as free as those Africans that went through the Great Depression, because they're able to farm for themselves. They'll be able to have water for themselves, food for themselves. They'll be able to have all the commodities they need that they don't have to get from the system. So if you're stuck in Walmart and that's where you're getting a lot of your stuff, stuck in Home Depot and that's where you're getting a lot of your stuff, you're going to get to a situation as to where you wish you were in a co-creation type of community, co-creation type of mindset, where you're going to be able to really bring together the people that are around you and beyond in order for you to be able to sustain yourself. So we're talking about sustainability, right? Sustainability in a way as to where you, the original indigenous beings, and anybody else that is on this land will be able to put together an economy that will not be affected by the economy on the outs. How does this affect cryptocurrency? Well, if any cryptocurrency is not backed by something that is going to be substantial, it is going to fall completely. So if you're heavily invested in cryptocurrency, you will find yourself possibly in a situation as to where you might be losing every dime that you have, because if it's not backed by anything that is real, such as a commodity like gold or silver, platinum or something like that, you'll find yourself having absolutely no worth. So now the dollar that you have is no longer a silverback. It is just paper based on an understanding that it's worth something. So now when Russia begins to start calling in its debts, if you don't have the gold, you're going to have to come up with all kinds of creative ways to be able to paying them off. Just like how the United States was taking water out of the Great Lakes in order for them to be able to pay off the debt to China. How at one point, if you remember this, it was about maybe back in the, I think it was 2006, 2007, where they were telling everybody to hand in their cars, the old cars, donated to the government. Because the government was melting down the cars, taking all the precious metal, and they were sending it over to China to repay its debts. And now because they destroyed the oil industry in the United States is now, I believe it's $250 billion or so getting oil from Russia. Getting oil from Russia. So essentially the West has actually put themselves in the position to fund whatever Russia wanted to do, even though they don't want Russia to do it. So there's a lot of things that are going on right now that are swirling around, that if you've been listening to, A New Thunder and a few other people that are out there giving out the other real news, I don't call it alternative news, I call it the real news. I call the other news that are on the TV that you look at, I call that alternative news, because they aren't telling you the real thing. They're telling you an alternative story in order for you to be locked in to whatever you're locked in. So I just want everybody to understand that Russia is now on the gold standard. So it's happening. BRICS is happening. It's happening. And if your house is not in order, if you don't have a co-creation community that can do business within and do business with other co-creation communities, you may find yourself at a very strict deficit. So what does this mean for the people of this land? It means that you need to begin to start getting yourself a co-creation mindset. I don't care if you're white or if you are of the Muir people who are people who are descendants of the Moors that have now been renamed as the American Indian, etc. You have to have a co-creation mindset in order for you not to be able to get tied in to this economic calamity that's just getting ready to happen. Lastly, I want you to understand what Canada did to show that the SWIFT system and the Federal Reserve has control over every single dollar, Canadian dollar, Mexican dollar, peso, whatever you want to say, right? Has control over everything that you do. Because what they do in this system, it's digital. They want you to be in a digital system so they can shut down every avenue of existence of being able to support yourself possible. Because if they don't like what you're doing, or if you're not doing what they say you should do, they can label you in any kind of a way with your social score, and then all of a sudden they'll shut down your bank account. They'll shut down any of your PayPal accounts. Any financial situation in this system, they will shut down, and you will be shut down with it. You won't, even if you're working every day. If you're not doing what they want you to do, they can take away your very existence by shutting down your very finances, so you can't pay your bills, can't buy, can't do anything. Right? So we heard something like that in Revelations of the book of the Bible, which gets their stories from a lot of other different stories, that you will not be able to sell wheat, barley, or peddle with inside of their own banking system. And remember, this Federal Reserve is no different from what the any of the older systems that are on the earth that created banking. And we'll get into one of those kinds of conversations a little bit later, because this is very, 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 very interesting with that. So just remember, Russia is now off the gold system. Very important. If you can, well, it's not about if you can. Begin to really get into a co-creation mindset, and we'll make sure that we'll link everybody up together. All right, so we'll give an update on what's going on up there in Flint as well. We'll give an update what's going on with other co-creation communities that have been formed around this country. We'll give an update what's going on with the governmental system that has been formulated, because the Americus is back. The Americus is functioning, and the MUR, M-U-R-R, or American Indian people, are now functioning. And when we do another report, I will show you the map that they go by, showing you all of your ancient culture and cities. But right now, understand that the economic situation on this planet has now changed by Russia going back to the gold standard. This is I Am Not the Elite, and we will be talking soon. Great Grand Rising to us all.